ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नाम्ने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining today for our second and concluding session on mental health wisdom based on the Ramayana. Yesterday, I discussed broadly about the Gita's principle of Abhyas and Vairagya as bonds and boundaries. So essentially, mental health is like physical health. And basically, if there is a stimulus and a large response, small stimulus, large response, or large stimulus and tiny response, these are signs of some kind of dysfunction. So life is tough, and life does involve all of us facing certain challenges. How we respond to those challenges will determine whether our mental health stays good or it worsens. And yesterday I discussed how, in terms of external association, we need to keep at a distance people who try to exploit the weaknesses of our mind. And we need to have people close to us who give us an alternative to what the mind is telling us, an alternative narrative. So we need these two things. Now, today, I will move further and we'll talk more about the internal dynamics of the mind. That yesterday I mentioned how a small stimulus leads to a large response. Now, why does that happen? That if we consider the mind to be the intermediate between the body and the soul, so then here, whenever any stimulus comes in from the outer world, the samskaras in the mind, they can cause that particular stimulus to become enlarged. So, like I mentioned, if somebody has been bitten by a dog, then as soon as they see a dog, even that may be a tiny, cuddly little poodle, still all that they see is a teeth, and they get alarmed by that. So, in this context, what can we do? There are already certain impressions in the mind, and we can't wish away those impressions. They're already there. So basically, when we need to change the impressions gradually. But we need to change our impressions, whatever are there inside, and we need to change our vision of those impressions. That means just because some idea, some urge is coming from inside me, that does not necessarily mean that it is my desire. It may be something that just comes from within because It may be coming from within, but it is not necessarily my desire. So generally, let me explain this with, say, an example. One of the most dramatic and traumatic incidents in the Mahabharata is the abduction of Sita. And one of the key ways in which the mind often deludes us is by falsely interpreting events and causing people to be blamed who are not to be blamed. The mind doesn't just take in phenomena. It takes in, that's one aspect of it. Sometimes it makes some phenomena very big, some phenomena very small. But beyond that, what the mind also does is it interprets. And when it interprets, at that time, it can make a big mess of things. So let's see how the mind can misinterpret and what we can do about preventing this misinterpretation. So when Ram and Lakshman were in the Ram, Lakshman, Sita were in the forest, they were initially in Chitrakoot. Chitrakoota, Driniketan, Rama. So I just come to Kanpur today. I was in Kolkata yesterday. So from here, just Chitrakoot is just 1.5 hours, 2 hours away. So they're staying in Chitrakoot over here. And then from here, toward the last year, at the start of last year, they went down. Dandaka, Vanajan, Pavan, Rama. They came to Dandakavan. Now, when they came to Dandakaranya, that was the time where Krudradhipa Samsevit Rama, they met Krudradhipa, that is Jatayu. And he instantly had a fraternal, a fatherly kind of relationship with them. And he felt that these are like, I will take care of them. Especially, I'll take care of Sita. And then while they were living there, Ravan made a whole conspiracy. He made a terrible plan by which he had Maricha come in the form of a deer. And then Sita saw the deer and said, "Hey, I'm going to see how beautiful is this deer." So we are going to try to analyze today that when something bad happens, how our mind interprets the cause and how we should try to interpret the cause. How the interpretation might be a misinterpretation. Based on that, we'll see how in this key skill of interpretation, we need to be much more accurate. So here what happens is for Sita says, "Oh, this is such an attractive deer. See how extraordinarily attractive it is." They are a little suspicious. Actually, Lakshman is suspicious. Lakshman says, if something looks too good to be true, then probably it is not true. I suspect this is not a deer, this is a demon. Sita says, "Oh, Lakshman, you have a very suspicious mind. So just see how cute and so cuddly this deer is." Is everyone able to hear my voice? Yeah, I think if some people are not able to hear, maybe you can try to adjust. Is it better now? Is it clearer now? Okay. Thank you. Okay. So Sita turns to Ram and she says, "You get this deer? He can be a nice pet for us. And While we are in the forest, it can amuse us. And after we go back, then we can give this as a gift, as a memento from the forest to Mother Kaushalya. Now Ram looks at Sita and he thinks, she has sacrificed so much for me. He was all with me to the forest even when she didn't have to. She practically never asked me for anything. He looks at Lakshman also and he thinks, Lakshman, maybe there is some merit to his words, but then he decides that let me go and get this deer. And then he goes. Then, as he goes, they all expect, at least Sita expects and Ram also expects, that they will just be able to reach the deer, catch it, and bring it back. But then, what happens is, the deer just runs away very fast. And Lord Ram runs very fast. And he catches up with the deer. And just when he's about to catch the deer just takes a giant leap and goes far away. And then Ram is surprised. How can a deer leap such ways? Again, he moves forward, chases it. And as soon as they want to catch the deer, this time it appears to not just leap but disappear. Then he appears far away. As this is happening again and again, Lord Ram starts becoming suspicious. And Lakshman's words are going on in his mind. And he starts thinking. Finally, he is able to reach the deer and he's about to catch it. That it leaps off. And then when it leaps off, it seems to look back and almost smirk at him, grin in a mocking way. And Ram decides this is enough is enough. This is not a deer. This is something dangerous. So he decides to shoot it. See, all along, because they had wanted the deer as a pet, he didn't want to kill it. But now he decides this is some trickster. Then he shoots. As soon as he shoots, the arrow goes and pierces the deer. And the deer has been, that Maricha has been assuming the form of a deer, but to take on any form requires some mystic power. And there's immense pain, then the attention shifts from maintaining that facade, that form, to protecting one's life. That's why in the final moments, most demons start manifesting their original form. And so they say, Ram immediately sees this is actually the Maricha demon. He races forward and he makes sure that it is dead. But before he dies, he calls out, Lakshman, Sita, extremely loudly. Clearly, he is calling for help. Rather, he is imitating Ram's voice perfectly. He's creating the pretense that Ram needs the help. Now, Ram immediately realizes that is a danger. As soon as he makes sure that the deer is dead, he turns around and starts racing back. Now, while he's racing back, at that time Sita hears this voice. He just breaks down in panic. Initially, although she has dismissed Lakshman's words, saying you're just being too suspicious, still she cannot just forget those words. And when Ram goes, he doesn't come back. He starts becoming fearful. Is Ram in danger? It's one thing if somebody we care for is in danger. It's quite another thing if that our object of love, our beloved, is in danger because we send them into danger. That combines not only anxiety with a sense of guilt. And then, so say, we wanted something from a grocery shop and we knew there's going to be a rainstorm over there. In India, we are quite fortunate. We don't have very severe storms generally. In some parts, we have cyclones. But in America, there are hurricanes and tornadoes, and they're quite deadly. Just now, Florida has been hit by two storms, one after another, Helena and then Milton. Many of our devotees are in trouble because of that. So, of course, they have emergency measures to take care of things. But my point is, if we knew that someone is that there's a storm, but we say, okay, can you just go and get this from the grocery shop? It's not very far, and you can probably come back before the storm hits us. And then when we go, that person goes, then we get the warning the storm is actually accelerating. The person is expected to come back in 15 minutes, it becomes half an hour, 1 hour. So not only is the person in danger, it is we, by our request, have put that person in danger. And on top of that, if what we needed from the grocery shop was not very urgent, what happens is that increases the guilt. Think, okay, having that pet was a nice thing as a deer. It's not really necessary. So now, if we feel that because of a mistaken request on our side, someone has got into danger, then we feel something has to be done to rectify it. That this person has to be freed from the danger. And how to free them? So then he turns toward Lakshman. He says, "No, your brother needs help. Please go." Lakshman is completely undisturbed. He says, "Do not worry, Ram is in no danger." Now, this is probably the same demon imitating the voice of Ram. Sometimes, when we see that somebody else is disturbed, now we want to calm them down. At the same time, now Lakshman, from his perspective, he wanted to calm Sita, but he was also alert. He tries to tell Sita, this is probably a conspiracy. Ram has told me to be by your side. So I'm going to be here to protect you. And Lakshman was on one side trying to keep Sita calm, but he was also alert. Is there some danger coming from anywhere? So sometimes what happens is when we want to pacify someone, we may try to reassure them. And our intent may be to reassure them, but what happens is that if that other person is disturbed, let's take it from our perspective. If I'm disturbed about something, and if I go and tell someone, it's a big problem. The other person doesn't seem to be concerned. The other person doesn't seem to be disturbed by it. So first we are disturbed by what has happened, and then we are disturbed because the other person is not disturbed. What exactly happens to Sita? When she sees Lakshman is not disturbed, it's Ram is in danger. And then further, Lakshman says that I'm here to protect you. He has no intention to mean anything negative over there. But for Sita, it increases her sense of guilt further. Because of me, Ram might be in danger. And now because of me, there is no help going to him. Because of me, Lakshman is not going to help Ram. So she just earnestly requests Lakshman, I'm in no danger. You please go and help Ram right now. Lakshman says, I cannot leave your side. Till now, they have stayed in the forest and they know that there are demons. And there have been some demons, and it's one demon which has tried to catch Sita and Ram and Lakshman, lop off his arms. So they know there has been danger. But till now, while they were in a hermitage, there has never been any danger. So Sita, because of her love and because also of her limited experience of forest life, she started thinking, Lakshman, I'm not in danger. Ram is in danger. Ram is clearly called for help. And Lakshman says, no, this is the demon imitating. Sita just loses it. You think I can't recognize my husband's voice? This is Ram's voice. So the more Lakshman tries to explain to her that the real danger is not to Ram, but to her, the more she just can't get what Lakshman is saying. She can't understand. Why are you thinking like this? There's no Ram is in danger. You should go and try to save him. So what happens for us? In general, inside us, we have two faculties. We have our intelligence, that is our buddhi, and we have our mind, and we are souls. So the soul consults the intelligence, consults the mind, and then makes a decision. So broadly, the intelligence is associated with reason. It is what we often call as the faculty of the head. The mind is associated with emotion. That is often what we call as the heart. So for good decision making, we need to consider both reason and emotion, the head and the heart. Krishna often talks about this in 8.7. Mai arpit mano buddhi. So both the reason of the intelligence and the emotion of the mind, both need to be directed toward Krishna. We need to use our reason. So ideal situation is when the intelligence and the mind both point us in the right direction. Say if we assume this is the wise or the right direction. So the opposite of it is the otherwise direction. So we are sometimes wise and sometimes otherwise. So now sometimes what may happen is the the mind may pull us in one direction and the intelligence may pull us in the other direction. That's a different situation. And this is where when we experience a tug of war inside us. Should I do this? I think this is good for me, but I feel this is what I should do. So to some extent, at this particular point, in the tug of war, whichever is nourished, if the intelligence is nourished, it will become stronger and it will go in that direction. If the mind is nourished, if the mind is fed, the mind will become stronger. And now sometimes when the emotion becomes strong, it is that the mind becomes so strong, the mind pulls in one direction and the intelligence becomes weak. And that times we do something which we know is not good for us, but the emotion overpowers us. However, in some situations, it just doesn't happen like this. It's like not only does the mind go in a particular direction, but if this is my mind and this is my intelligence, the mind actually pulls the intelligence in the same direction. The mind becomes so strong that the mind pulls the intelligence. What does it mean? That from the mind, we start using our intelligence to justify what we want to do. That's why when Krishna talks about karma, he says karma can be situated in the indriyani manobuddhir asyadhisthana muchyate. So karma is not just lust, it can be lust, but it can be any self-destructive craving. So it can be anything. So alcoholism can be there. So it can be anything which makes us work against us. So here what happens is we have an unwise desire, but we use our intelligence to justify it. Sometimes we may just sideline. Sideline the intelligence means that we just neglect the intelligence. Just shut up. But sometimes the intelligence becomes utilized or misused by the mind. So here, when Sita just desperately wants Lakshman to go and help Ram, so Sita's emotions at this point, if you consider the emotions, what is happening is that there is, at one level, naturally anxiety is there. But along with that anxiety, there is guilt. There's guilt. I sent Ram into danger. And on top of that, now there is confusion. Why is Lakshman not going to help? So when there is confusion, no, I'm not in danger. Ram is in danger. Why is he not going to help? From that confusion, when the intelligence starts acting over here, there comes a justification or an explanation. Why is it that Lakshman is not listening to me? And in her anxiety, She may not be consciously aware of what she's saying, but she ends up telling, now, Lakshman, I know why you're not going. You are not going because you have an evil eye on me. Right from the beginning, when you came to this forest, you always wanted to have me for yourself. And because of that, you were waiting all along for the opportunity. That's why even if Ram is dying, you're not going to help him so that you can fulfill your dark desires. But know that I will never let myself be touched by anyone else. I would much rather die than be touched by you. When she speaks like this, she is so desperate. He's trying to make sense. Why is Lakshman not going? And in her desperate attempt to make sense of Lakshman's refusal to go, he comes up with some explanation. Now, when he speaks this grievous accusation, Lakshman just can't bear it. He just can't bear it. So, Sita, you do not know what you're speaking. Please don't speak such words. You will never be able to enjoy me. I would much rather die. He keeps repeating that in her frenzy of anxiety and anger and all the storm of emotions that is going on in her heart. One says, so Sita, when you are speaking such words, I cannot be here with you. Fear that when I come back, I may not find you here. But still, because you're speaking such words, I will leave and I will go and find Ram. Now, in the Valmiki Ramayana, there is no mention of the Lakshman Rekha. That does not mean it did not happen. It just means that in the Valmiki Ramayana, the narrative goes without any that formation of the protective circle. So then, after this, Lakshman charges out, following in the footsteps of Ram. He goes a significant distance and suddenly he hears a loud noise of someone very powerful racing rapidly. And he hides behind a shrub to watch. So as he's watching, at that time, he sees that it is Ram. He's relieved. When Ram sees him, Lakshman is relieved to see Ram, but Ram is anxiety. Ram is filled with anxiety to see Lakshman. Says, why are you here? Where is Sita? Why did you leave her? Now, Lakshman cannot even dare to speak the words which Sita has accused him with. Somehow, when Ram is asking, Ram is demanding an explanation. So he somehow gets himself to speak that accusation. He spoke like this. And Ram just brushes it off. He says, she must be filled with anxiety. She's sentimental. Why do you take her words so seriously? He rushes back. Oh, they rush back. When they come to the hermitage, I'm using a Bluetooth mic. Is this better now? Is this better? Okay. So I'm sorry, I can't do anything about this right now. we will record the audio separately, and the audio is not clear, we'll upload the audio separately afterwards. I have some cough, so I can't speak much louder than this. So Sita, so when they come back, they find Sita is no longer there. Now, in this case, if we look at who is wrong over here, whose mistake was it? That we could say, was it Sita's mistake? Well, you could say she made a request. Now, if you consider her request, it was a, relatively speaking, a selfless request. So we can have this as a gift and a special gift from the forest for Mother Kaushalya. Now, if we consider Ram's obliging Sita, was that wrong? You could say that he was reciprocating with her. Now, he was reciprocating with her in the sense that she had done so much, he wanted to do something for her. Now, if we consider further, was it Lakshman's leaving? Was it wrong? Now we can say understandable what he did. He felt terribly hurt by what Sita had done. Now, if we consider Sita, when I talk about mistake, here I was talking about Sita's request itself. Was that wrong? Now, if we consider Sita's accusation, now that certainly was painful what she spoke, but we can understand that she was herself in pain. Like we say, hurt people, hurt people. No, it was not that she deliberately wanted to hurt Lakshman. Somehow she was trying to make sense of what had happened, and somehow she was trying to goad Lakshman to go, and just spoke some things. If you can consider Lakshman, when he came back, he could have said when he found Sita is gone, the sirs are right. He spoke something like this to me. She should be punished for that. He didn't at all think like that. Why? Although he was terribly hurt, he understood that whatever she spoke and whatever hurt I have felt, that is nothing as compared to the danger Sita might be in. No, it is my duty to help Ram protect. Now, when Ram chastised him, said, "You should not have taken her word seriously. You should not have left Sita." Lakshman could have said to Ram, "You could have listened to me first when I said that it was a demon and not just a deer." Sita was sentimental. Same argument. So she spoke, made some request, but you are intelligent. You should have listened to me, then this whole thing would not have happened. So sometimes after something happens, things go terribly wrong. It's very easy for everyone to blame everyone else. But ultimately, who is wrong? It is Ravan who is wrong. It is Ravan who made this whole conspiracy. It is Ravan who was driven by such terrible lust. So sometimes what happens is, now we may say there are bad people and the bad people will do bad things. So we have to be cautious. That is true. But while being cautious, we cannot lose perspective that terrible things happen in the world. And the most important person responsible for those terrible things are the people who are doing those terrible things. Now, even now in Bangladesh, terrible things are happening to the Hindus over there. Although now what has happened in the news cycle has become exhausted, not much is being covered in the news. But terrible things are happening. We could say, some people may say, okay, when India got when there was the whole Bangladesh program in 1971. People should have, all Hindus should have left there and come here. It's your own mistake. Now, what did you expect in a country like that? So there are going to be different justifications that can come up. Why did you support one political party? Maybe you should hedge your bets and supported both parties. And that's why now this is being coming back to you. Maybe you should build better relationships. Whatever. So there can be many uh, factors can be analyzed when something terrible has already happened. But the point is, blaming doesn't help. So here, both Ram and Lakshman, there is no description that Ram continues blaming Lakshman. Why did you Sita? You Sita, or Lakshman ever blames Ram, saying that, why did you even chase after that deer? Now it has happened. Now let's see what we can do to fix the situation. And it is not that when Lakshman meets Sita after the battle is over in Lanka, Lakshman doesn't say to Sita, say, you remember what you spoke to me? When are you going to apologize? Something old now. There's no need to bring it up. It was circumstantial. So basically, we'll talk about this from two perspectives. That don't see intention in words spoken in tension. Don't see intention in words spoken in tension. So the idea is that we all may sometimes be subjected to such difficult situations that we may all do things that we won't be proud of later, that we may be terribly regretful of. On one side, we can say that we should try to avoid doing such things. And there is truth through that. But at the same time, life is so difficult that sometimes it can bring out the worst even from the best among us. So the thing is that when something like this happens, it's important for us to see that if I am here and somebody else is here, so that the other person speaks something that disturbs me. Now, I shouldn't, in return, do something that disturbs them. Then both of us will simply end up creating a disturbed environment, maybe in our home, in our workplace. Eventually, it will become a disturbed world. So this is not healthy. So on one side, Krishna says, Yasman no dvijate loko, lokan no dvijate chayaha. So if somebody around us is behaving in ways that is disturbing for us, don't take it. They speak some words which are completely out of character for them, but they speak it sometimes. So don't take it too seriously. That if it's just a one-off event, everybody sometimes does. Everybody has weak moments. So let it go. Now, there are few things as powerful as let it go. Now, this is the power of detachment. There are so many people who waste so much of the mental energy. 25 years ago, you spoke like this to me. 17 years, 3 months, 2 days ago, you did that to me. And I'm counting the days till I can get back to you for that. So this kind of thing simply makes things worse. We can't really help in such situations. So let it go. That's what Lakshman does. Now, does this mean that what Sita had done is right? No, that's not what we are saying. What she did, it was wrong, but it is understandable. What was she going through at that time? Of course, you may say, when I'm talking about these sacred characters, it's important to understand that we can look at these characters from many different perspectives. One is when we look at the Leela, we can look at it from a transcendental perspective and say that it's all a part of the Lord's plan. It is the Lord's plan orchestrated for a higher purpose. And that is definitely true. But we can also look at it from an ethical perspective, where we can learn lessons for ourselves. So here we are looking at it from that ethical perspective, that we can learn some lessons. So learn to let it go. Much of the toxicity in the mind, I talk about this, the impressions that are formed inside. How are the impressions formed? Sometimes we need to be able to treat our mind like a pipe that we need to flush. If the pipe is not flushed, then what comes in gets stuck. Like when a person gets a heart attack, what happens is the arteries get clogged. And the arteries are meant to send blood through, but some fatty substance or whatever gets stuck in the arteries. And the passageway becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And when it becomes too small, the blood can't flow. It's where there's a cardiac arrest. So, like that, for us, in our mind, when things will come, if we let them go, then the impressions that are formed inside, either they can be less or they can be more. So, how much do we hold something in our mind? How much do we replay something in our mind? That will determine what kind of impressions we form in our mind. So, now we may say, how do we prevent this? So, that's the last part I'll talk about. I have mentioned this, that there is overthinking, which is often unproductive, if we counterproductive. But there is also deep thinking. Now, what is the difference between overthinking and deep thinking? What somebody may tell us we are thinking too much, and we may tell that you are thinking too little. It's a serious problem. We need to analyze it. They say you are just getting into paralysis by analysis. So, is it subjective that when is it overthinking and when it is deep thinking? Generally, the key difference between overthinking and deep thinking is that overthinking is just circular. It just goes round and round. It doesn't take us anywhere. Deep thinking is directed. That means we go deep into an issue, we analyze it, and once we have analyzed it, we come out with greater clarity. So, how do we know this? See, generally speaking, when we are thinking about the issue, we will find that with respect to our thinking, if there is clarity and time. Sometimes when we think about an issue, we get greater clarity. After some time, it just flattens out. Even if we think more, we don't get any clarity. And after that, the more we think, the more we end up with confusion. So it's best to put a stop to thinking at this point. And at this particular point, we need to put a hard stop. No more. Now, how do we know this? That, say, we cannot avoid, there's no stop button to our brain or to our mind. But what we can do is, we can ourselves evaluate. I'm thinking, and am I getting some clarity by it? If I am not, now why did something happen? Oh, why did Sita speak like this? Sita could have, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Sometimes bad things just happen in life. Sometimes there's something to learn for us, but sometimes just things are just beyond our control. That sometimes the only thing to learn is that right now there is nothing to learn. If somebody starts a business just before the pandemic came, and then they invested the money, and then suddenly they end up being, because of a lockdown, they have to pay the rent, but there's no business. and they invested all the money and they lost the money. Let's start thinking, why did this happen? Why did this happen? At that time, what can we know? Who could have anticipated a pandemic is going to come and that's going to cause a global lockdown? It's very, very difficult to anticipate. So sometimes the only thing to learn is that right now there's nothing to learn. Maybe in future, I'll be able to find out why did this happen and what could I have done, what could I have learned. So sometimes what happens is right from the beginning only, instead of getting clarity, as soon as you start thinking about an issue, you just go down. And only the more we think, the more confusion, the more frustration, the more desperation starts coming in. So at that time, it's important for us to decide that I will have some alternative object of thought. And that is where having some habit, something, if this is what we all have certain impressions inside us, and we can't change those impressions. But if you can find this intersection, there are things which are good for us and things that feel good for us. So when we have to redirect our thinking, so to take it to think in this area, it is tough. But to think in this area, it is relatively easier. So, for example, if my mind is just churning, going here and there, and sometimes we feel I'm churning, but what is happening is we are crushing ourselves. So at that time, we can't stop it. But we need to give ourselves something else to think about. Maybe hear some nice classes, which from a speaker that we can connect with, or hear some sweet music, go out for some walk, travel to a pilgrimage and pray to Krishna over there. Do something which will get our mind uh, out of its own overthinking mode. Give it something to think about. Sometimes we just as simple as going out for a walk, and just observing nature, and getting out of our head. So when we do that, we'll find that continuous churning of the mind will decrease. And sometimes maybe there is, in the big picture, they realized that what had happened was this was all a way by which the world was freed from the demon Ravan. And this was all a higher plan. But at that particular point, that was not necessarily visible. That was not necessarily visible. So what did they do at that particular point? They accepted this has happened. Let us move. Let us do what we can. So the more we let go of the things that we can't control, the more we can catch hold of the things that we can control. And the more we catch hold of the things that we can control, the more we can let go of the things that we can't control. So one reason why the mind becomes especially wild and almost insane is that we are either not letting go of something or we are not giving ourselves something to catch hold of. When we do our daily sadhana, when we chant the holy names, when we hear Krishna Katha, when we do some puja, we are giving ourselves, our mind, the training to catch hold of the things that are good for us. And when we keep doing these practices, they also will start feeling but good for us. And we'll be able to do them more easily, more fruitfully. And thus, they will become our shelter. And that's how to let go is the putting the boundary. Catch hold is the bond. So that Abhyas and Vairagya applies not just to external people, but it also applies to our own thought patterns. Okay. This I'm thinking about it. I'm not getting any clarity right now. So let's stop. Let me let go. Vairagya. But how can I let go? By having something to catch hold of. So when we do this, we'll find that it will be, relatively speaking, become easier to prevent our mind from cycling away to unhealthy things, from getting caught in something which is just entangling and degrading and self-destructive. So let go and catch hold. So let go is vairagya, catch hold. So in our mind management, in our maintaining our health, abhyas. So while these two are in this case one and two, but sometimes this can be one and this can be two. Essentially, this can lead to letting go can help us to catch hold. Catching hold can help us to let go. Whichever way it begins, we start from wherever we can, and we'll find that our mind will become lesser and lesser of our enemy. And over a period of time, as we move ahead in developing these habits, it will start becoming a friend. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. We don't have to catch hold of such subtle emotions. We need to catch hold of some direction where we can give our thoughts to. It doesn't have to be subtle emotions. Anything that falls in the intersection of feel good and do good. So any emotions we can catch up hold of. Any thoughts we can catch hold of. I summarize what I discussed today. We talked here about with respect to the mind and mental health, how the mind can get caught in escalatory spirals. In escalation means it can take a small thing and make it very big, and it can give its own spin on things. And in trying to make sense of things, it can take us towards complete nonsense. It can help us, it can lead us in opposite direction. So we discussed the incident of Sita's abduction and what led to it. So from one perspective we discussed is that mm, we try to avoid overreacting, that we try to hold, maintain perspective. But the key thing is it may not always be possible to control it. So what we don't see intention in what is spoken, intention. So Lakshman did not take Sita's words too seriously. Although at that time he walked away, but he did not blame her for that. Then what do we do at such times when something has happened? If we want to avoid overthinking and move towards deep thinking and clear thinking. So learn to let go if we are not getting clarity and catch hold. So when our graph of clarity versus time starts going down, we need to let go, create a break and catch hold. That means we find out something that falls in the intersection of what feels good and what is good. And as letting go and catching hold, they become so when the two are done in combination, that's where each one of us can actually learn to direct our mind more constructively. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So, what to catch hold of? I said that we have to find out what it is that falls at the intersection of something that feels good and something that is good for us. So, in devotional activities, we may find out there are many activities that we do, but some may be more, they're not just good for us, but they also feel good to us. So, we need to find out those activities and focus on those activities. So, now, why might some people exploit somebody else's mind? Well, they have their agendas. Somebody might be greedy and they want to steal the money from somebody else. That's why they fuel their greed. The advertising companies, the more they advertise in seductive ways, the more they can catch our attention and then they fill our minds and empty our pockets. Okay. Yes, Sankarshan Priya Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji, once again. You explained it very clearly. Prabhuji, suppose we are in such a situation that we have to take some decision in which, like you told the two circles, something which is good for us, some things we feel which we feel good for us. If we are in such a situation and we have to take decision, and we know that it is good for me in long run, but we are not able to arrive at that decision, and we want to decide that something which we feel good for us. In that in that cycle, mind rotates and rotates and rotates. Suppose you told that you leave that thoughts for some time by catch hold of sadhana and other things, but ultimately we have to take that decision. So in such a case, in such a situation, what should we do so that ultimately we have to face this situation? For some time we may not have to face these things, but
So we all may have to do things which we do not like at times, we do not feel good to us. But if that is all that we have to do all the time, that is going to be a problem. It's like food. Now we can't expect that every single item that we eat is going to be delicious. But we also need some tasty food. So sometimes the things that feel good for us, we may have to do them so that we get some strength, and then we can do the things that are good for us, even if they don't feel good. So a balancing act of our emotions we need to do, and then by that we will be able to persevere. So sometimes there's some people who are difficult in our lives. Then we have to work with those people. Then we also need to have some people in our life who are uplifting for us, who are positive for us, and by associating with them, we get the strength to deal with the difficult people. The same principle applies in our world with emotions also.
thank you.
So how to remain how to remain consistent with detachment and attaching to the right path? I think don't worry about being consistent. It's just too unrealistic. That consistent means you expect to get the same level all the time. The mind is like a child. Can we expect a small child who is 3 years old or 5 years old, 7 years old to be consistent? No, child will have its moods. So even if we can't be consistent, we can be resilient. We go down, but we rise up. We may go down. Sometimes the mood might be there, situation might be there, such that we are just not able to be consistent. We go down, but just because we have gone down doesn't mean we have to stay down. Yeah, I went down. This was a difficult situation for me. I just couldn't cope it. But now I'm better. Let me rise up. If we try to be resilient, then that is doable for us. Then over a period of time, we will be able to move forward and do the things that are important for us. So we'll also be able to learn where is it that we need to be, we can allow ourselves to be, even if I go down a little bit on this issue, it doesn't matter so much. And some issues we may decide they're too important. I will force myself to be consistent, but we can't force ourselves to do that all the time. Okay. Yes, Aditya, but to your question.
Uh, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. Prabhuji, I have a bit of a personal question related to the lecture only. That my father really bullies me a lot, and I have to live in his house only. So my mind is always preoccupied by thinking about all the rude things that he is saying or the bad things that he is doing. Now, I have tried to let go a lot of times, but many times what ends up happening is that the bully in him feels strengthened and emboldened by me not reacting or me trying to tolerate the problem. And I have tried to think that it is just my karma and I should tolerate it, but uh, uh, on a practical front, it becomes difficult. In like I have to live here, I have to do my sadhana, I have to do my job. So I was just
So
wondering
this is a
what
very
we can
specific.
do.
This is a very specific question. I think somebody who knows you personally
Yeah.
and who understands the situation, that is the best person to guide you in this thing. Because this is not a issue for which you can get some insight from someone at one time that is going to solve the problems all time. This is something which is an ongoing
Okay.
issue. So I
Yeah,
suggest
yeah, yeah.
that in your community, if you find some devotee who is trustworthy, who can be like a counselor, talk with them.
Hmm.
So generally
Cool.
speaking, the
Yeah,
principle
yeah,
I
yeah.
mentioned,
Generally. Hmm.
the principle I said earlier that if there are people who are creating difficulties for us in our life, they are difficult to deal with. Now sometimes we have to deal with it. We can't avoid it. Now being you're in a situation that it being a father is very difficult. But then for somebody it might be a sibling, and
Hmm.
and sometimes it may be that our sibling does something to us, and then in front of our parent, the sibling appears talks very nice, so nobody believes it also. Sometimes it might be the boss. So we
Hmm.
do have difficult situations. So basically, we need someone's association, some friend, some other relative, someone else who can give us strength to face this. That's the first thing. And then second is that somebody who understands, ideally speaking, that person who is troubling us, so that they can help us formulate a strategy by which we can deal with them. So now we don't want to be in a
Hmm.
constant state of
Hmm. Hmm.
fighting. But at the same time, as you said, that if you are constantly just trying to tolerate, that may only make them do more things. So somehow some boundaries have to be set. And what is going to be done, how that is going to be done in the particular situation that you are in, that will not be easy to decide. That's why mm, you need to talk with someone who understands the situation at a practical level.
Uh, right, Prabhuji. Prabhu, could I make it a little more general? Because it relates to a Siddhant that I'm trying to understand a bit too. Like, could I generalize the question a bit?
So there are, quickly, because there are other
Okay,
questions
yeah.
also. I cannot spend
So the thing is
less
that
than one
at
less than 1 minute. Less than 1 minute to ask the question.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So at what point do we decide that this is our karma or this is some kind of injustice
Don't
happening to it?
don't ever get into the thought of karma. Focus on dharma. This thinking about karma is one of the most counterproductive things in such situations. You know, nobody tells
Hmm.
Draupadi when she is being abused that she's being disrobed, it's your own karma, tolerate it. Nobody tells Sita that when she's abducted, that it is your own
Hmm.
karma that this happened.
Hmm. Okay, so I should think about what is my dharma in this situation. Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
The things that happen to us, there is some element of karma involved. So fight not to retaliate against the Pandav. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes, okay. So fight not to retaliate against the Kauravas, but fight to do your dharma as a Kshatriya. So for us, we have to think about what is our dharma. And while doing our dharma, But if something is preventing us from doing our very dharma, and the basic dharma is that we need to survive. For example, if somebody is in a particular situation and they are unable to bear that situation completely, and they are so frustrated that they are almost depressed, they are suicidal. Somebody tells them, just tolerate, it's all your karma. And they may not be able to tolerate it, they may end up ending their lives. That would be horrible. Protecting our life is the first dharma. Then after that, we have other dharmas. If you're not alive, you cannot do any other dharma at all. So we are never meant to be karma centered. Yes, karma is a factor to consider, but dharma is the most important factor. So tolerance means that there are big things in our life and we want to keep the big things big. And there are small things in our life and we want to keep them small. So tolerance enables us to keep the big things big and the small things small. And for that, we should be able to decide what is the big thing and what is the small thing. Doing our dharma is the big thing. The inconvenience that we face while doing the dharma is a small thing. But if the inconvenience is becoming so big that we cannot do the big thing, then we have to make some changes. So that is the broad principle over there.
Thank you.
So one last question, we will stop. Do all thoughts come from the planets? Well, where thoughts come from is not as important as where thoughts take us, and where we let our thoughts take us. That is up to us. It's like multiple choice exam. Where do all the options come from? Wherever the options may come from the teacher, but we don't have to bother whether the options have come from the teacher or not. Which is the right option for me? That is what we should be considering. Just because the thoughts have come from the planets, wherever they may have come from, doesn't matter. Which is the thought that is anukul for me, which is the favorable for me? That's what we need to choose. So now with respect to the mind, when the mind overcomes for the intelligence gets confused. And does this justification come from the mind, or and does the mind have both memory and analytical aspect? Well, the mind can, when it overpowers the intelligence, the word overpowering, what does it mean actually? It can mean two things: that the intelligence is silenced, and then the mind does what it wants. I think the intelligence, I don't care what you say. But sometimes the mind starts controlling the intelligence, and that's where justifications come up. So the justifications themselves are coming from the intelligence, but the intelligence is controlled by the mind. It's like a soldier who is meant to fight for a country. If that soldier is seduced by somebody, then what happens? That soldier may end up becoming a traitor and fighting against that very country. So like that, our intelligence can sometimes get perverted. That's how the justifications, they come from the intelligence, but they're coming from the intelligence that is seduced and perverted by the mind. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Sri Ramachandra Bhagwan ki jai. I pray that the wisdom of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita and the wisdom as illustrated by Lord Ram in the Ramayana will help all of us to become stronger at the level of our minds, and thus fulfill the plan that Krishna has for each one of us. Thank you very much. Hare